to such an extent that the systemic vision is always there when decisions are made, and these people with high responsibility also always used it whenever they need it. And so within this process of conversation and reflection, it was possible to visualize what were the well-being spaces or spaces that were not so good where they were in the organization. One of the most important things, and that made more sense, maybe not for all people in the group, and we have to be honest, was always to be careful about self-respect, to have a systemic look on decisions, tasks, responsibilities, and also as a director or a manager to create space for collaboration, for suggestions on the part of the workers in the organization.
So in the organization's tasks, we reflect what we are doing and how we are doing things, which is important for any organization and for the decision-making by the board of directors. It's important to see what we are doing and how, and this opens a world of possibilities. Also, to reflect upon the consequences of what I'm doing makes me more accountable and more ethical if I am aware of such consequences. We cannot let these spaces of well-being not exist. And in order to produce, sometimes discomfort is hidden under the carpet. Many times it's preferable to talk about these discomforts, because the best way and the only way to face to face these discomfort spaces is to know what we want to conserve in our comfortable spaces. Coincidentally, in the last MO process, a possibility was opened to be able to reflect upon and go deeper in the issue. This was a space for meeting that was carried out in the desert of Atacama in Chile. Some strategic positions of the organization which were capable of bring different looks and different, we were called by the system's presidency to experience a deep and innovative process in the desert of Atacama with the Matrix School under the foundations of cultural biology, and understanding that. And in this physical space, which is the desert, the Atacama Desert, we were able to find ourselves with different looks from the organization. We were able to strengthen our professional links, to broaden our scope, and to start from then on an intense process of transformation in living together. This was a very rich moment, very special moment. We had a lot of progress in our relationships, and now we can notice that we were preparing at that moment to live a large process of co-inspiration. And this process of co-inspiration has been possible to be experienced in a project which results from all this intense process of corporate education, which we called as a systemic dynamic map. The systemic dynamic map was an idea which we had and which is translated into a project, which was basically to do two things. One, to do a mapping or a segment of which were the spaces that many times kept people from, or in relationships from flowing, and the other, it the other important issue is to show the organization president what were the blind spots, because that existed in his management, because we need to consider that this organization now has 3,400 collaborators, and if I'm not mistaken, it has 15 or 16 CEOs, and an approximate amount of 120 line managers. So decision-making many times could not that it didn't want to, but it could not see the dimensions that the decisions caused in the organization. This systemic dynamic map was based on the meta-systemic law, in which we have to include the vision in the process and not in the result. This changes everything. Usually in this culture and in everyone's practice, the result is in the number, in the achievement, but then we lose the process. And this way we cannot see what we are doing and how we are doing in order, and we need to improve in order to obtain the results that we want to achieve. We had it clear what the purpose of the systemic dynamic map was, but we were open to experience a process of co-inspiration. And in this co-inspiration process, we would have the timely actions to broaden the spaces of comfort and well-being in our organization. And we started this process choosing a distinct space for this co-inspiration, and usually this took place around a good coffee. And we distinguished as one great timely action we experienced this year. We have been experiencing a process of transition. Our president, Rodrigo Rocha Loures, after 8 years in management, he is closing his term right now. He's ending his term. So we are now co-inspiring with him. Well, and how is that? Well, historically, organizations of this nature have many losses in the transformation process, above all with regards to the care of the organizational culture. So it seems to us that it would be opportune to take care of the organizational culture, being aware of the process that we had experienced. And based on that, and from that moment on, we gathered efforts to show the awareness of the transformation process and cultural change that had taken place until that moment, and which we intended to conserve. To know what the social impacts were of the actions of the FIEP system, and what this in qualitative and quantitative ways, and know what everybody was doing based on what we wanted to conserve. More so than showing results at that moment, we wanted and we had to share the understanding of cultural transformation dynamics, also social and organizational dynamics, in such a way that the presidency of the FIEP system and each collaborator could distinguish and reveal by its own experience the value of the contribution in the whole process. It was also opportune to reveal the people that had worked each and every day for the FIEP system to build such extraordinary results. And also, we imagined that it could be possible to experience all that starting from a conversation, intense, deep conversation with the president, in which he would invite and co-inspire once again with all of the 3,200 collaborators of the FIEP system. And this is how this big meeting, making history, was born to improve the lives of people. We have people that are fearful with a negative expectation of a denial. We had people strengthened because of the discovery that they have been making a difference in the history of the FIEP system. And this is the process that we're going to show now. And that they have been making a difference, and that they are part of this achievement, part of this result, which was obtained by that organization. Not only in terms of their work, but also the commitment and the passion which they put in their everyday work. In this process, we wanted to make evident the humanization of the FIEP system, which brought as a consequence, and not as an end in itself, extraordinary results. We wanted, with these meetings that we'll show a small sample of to you, we wanted to bring the awareness of the good land we have in the FIEP system. So the big conversation was begun in all of the organization. We had our management, our president, talking for 2 weeks with all of the collaborators of the FIEP system. And it has been extremely exciting to see in these meetings groups of 300, and they grew 500, 800, 1,000 collaborators. They were always large groups who were in the most profound silence when they were invited to stop and to think about everything they had done in these last 8 years. In that regard, I think our intention, our purpose was fulfilled because we could understand that at that moment, organized for a meeting between the president and his collaborators, people allowed themselves, they stopped to reflect, to think, to remember, to share experience, transforming experiences, and the emotional space of the organization was transformed as these conversations took place. Between the beginning of the meeting and the end of the meeting was one process, and between one meeting and another there was another process. And it was a growing pattern, and we noticed ever more enthusiasm, joy, lightness, and the wholeness of people, extremely creative people who were present in a way that until then seemed impossible or unknown, delivering themselves, trying to talk and recall what they themselves would like to conserve and what they had to do to preserve this well-being in the moments that were to come.
For me, what was unprecedented and was most innovative in this process was of the history, the stories. I'm sorry. It was that a company an organization would stop to think of what they had done, how and the results they had obtained, and thinking about what they were doing and what they wanted to keep for the development and for the new cycle that was to come in this organization. This was the most innovative thing, to have an organization to stop to think about all this. So they had a basic design. It started with the higher leader of a unit or a regional unit. Not everybody had been present in 2004 when we were all invited to become a continuously learning organization. And so they would go back to that a little bit, and right after that we would invite people to be whole, fully present for a huge learning lesson on how to experience things together. And so the leader of these regional units would bring the results that had been achieved, showing figures, showing how much we had gone beyond the goals that had been set. And then the president would talk about the purpose of this big conversation and he was profoundly grateful for the work of each and every person in the organization. He mentioned the meaning of the work of each and every one that made it